mechanism for protection. In fact, the authorities keep journalists under close surveillance and do not hesitate to threaten them by different laws and different framework. So today we'll be looking at journalism, freedom of expression, and the state of the nation in Nigeria. We have, an expert in the field joining us, someone who has exposed different use of the society and deficiencies in some of our institutions in this country. I'm talking about Fisayo Soyombo. He's an investigative journalist and founder of Foundation for Investigative Journalists, FIJ. He joins us on the podium this morning. Fisayo Soyombo, great to have you. Good morning. Thank you for being on the podium today.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, thank you so much. And it's a panel discussion, so we are going to have our panelists joining us on the conversation as well. They'll be asking you questions and making comment as this conversation progresses. Let me first welcome one of our panelists. The other one will join us later on. Barrister Yomi Ogunlola is a lawyer. Barrister, good to have you. Good morning.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Toba.
Yes.
Good morning, Nigeria. And Fisayo, it's so good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so let's kickstart the conversation. I mean, the numbers are not looking good for Nigeria from that report I read. In fact, in the 2024 Press Freedom Index, Nigeria was ranked one of the most dangerous and difficult countries for journalists, 122nd out of 130 countries surveyed by that organization. How concerned is this, especially given that we are in a democracy, and one of the indices through which the success of a democracy is weighed is the freedom of the press, based on how important the profession of journalism is to the people. Fisayo.
Thank you. So, first of all, because I don't think I would say that the state of freedom in any.
Oh, Fisayo, your lines seem to be breaking.
Yeah, it's actually hear my voice and a bit of a distraction. I can hear myself.
Oh, because okay.
Do you want us to and then try again?
All right, maybe we should do that. Let's try and do that. We'll reconnect with you.
All right.
Yes. Right. Stay tuned as we reconnect with our guest, Fisayo Soyombo. This, as I said, he's done different investigative journalism work. Regarding the correctional service, the customs service, different sectors in Nigeria. So let me just play an excerpt of his past interviews, talking about some of his expose as an investigative journalist, and when we get back, we'll try and reconnect with him. Do stay with us.
In prison, if you have money, you will never suffer. You serve the prison either with your body or with your money. I can tell you Bobrisky did not spend time in prison. Spent 3 weeks and they moved him out. There's no single Nigerian who has money and does not want to complete their time in prison that will do it. It's only if they want to. So it is a daily occurrence. Justice in Nigeria is for the poor. It's not for the rich. Inmates have phones. How do they have phones?
Well, one of the many comments made by Fisayo in his past interview. So can you hear us now? Is it better now?
Yeah, this is better.
Okay. So before we get into some of the work you've done, I'd like you to answer the question I asked you earlier. I don't know if you got the question about how the numbers are not looking good for Nigeria, even after about 25 years into uninterrupted democratic rule.
Yes, so I was saying that no one should be surprised. These figures are indicative of the rot in public office. So, okay, so I can, but I'll try.
Oh.
So,
hello, Fisayo.
The fact that I can fix it to put my thoughts myself.
Oh, it looks like we have to reconnect with you again. I don't know. There seemed to be an issue with your connection. Let's go back to the excerpt of that interview.
What are cell phones to inmates? And this is not an allegation. Some of the tweets you see are inmates tweeting on Facebook by the way, I spent 5 nights in the police cell. All they wanted to do was collect bribes. to free me because I didn't pay. We got someone to arrange that. I bought a car, a vehicle. I paid out of 2.8. I paid 500, and I didn't want to pay the rest. And changed the charge to stealing and hijacking of SUV. Person said I didn't complete payment, and I didn't want to. So each day they were asking, "Oh, you don't have someone to come and settle your bill." They just wanted bribes, but I wanted to go to prison because police was not the target. And so at the end, after 5 Monday to Friday, they had to arraign me in court. First thing to note is that once the magistrate said remanded in prison custody, and the court closed, and they took me down to the holding cell, the first thing the prison warder did, there was a lady who was working as my sister. They told me to go into their office in court, and they told her to peep into the holding cell. I had peeped myself, I saw, and they told her, "Is that the kind of place you want your brother to say?"
Okay, yes, it looks like Fisayo is back again. Fisayo, so sorry, we are hoping to have a smooth conversation with you, boys. Looks like the network is not allowing us. I hope that you can hear me clearly now. I hope it's better now.
Yeah, I can hear you, but let me see if I can hear myself.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so it
Yes.
looks good now.
Yes.
So I was saying those figures indicate the rot in public office. So you have the degree of media freedom, press freedom available in a country is a direct correlation to the sanity, the cleanliness, the probity of its public officers. Because the only reason the government goes after the press is that the press is trying to reveal something that the government doesn't want the people to know. So figures of press freedom just show how clean the public space is. And that's why in a lot of countries where the press freedom is low, you also see that the countries perform very poorly on the transparency index, on the corruption index. Nigeria is a country where people steal and get away with it. Elected officers or selected officers or officers who rig themselves into public office, still with impunity, get away with it, come back several years after, get celebrated. Look at IBB. Look at Ibrahim Babangida. Decades after, public launch of a book, public launch of a presidential library, raised billions of naira. It is a shock that in a country like Nigeria, IBB can want to launch a book and the media covers it generously. It's like we have forgotten what IBB did to us. When this guy was military president, the press could not operate freely. The journalists could not go to newsrooms, could not go to offices to hold editorial meetings. Lots of newspapers were shut down for varying periods of time at different times. The Guardian was shut down at some point. The Vanguard was shut down at some point. Punch was shut down at some point. There were journalists who lost their jobs. There were media organizations who struggled to stay in business. Salaries were owed simply because advertisers were avoiding the media houses that the government was antagonizing. They didn't want to get to the bad books of the government. It was such a terrible time. And that kind of human rights defenders got persecuted, got jailed multiple times, lawyers got jailed multiple times. Delegiwa was assassinated. IBB till date continues to say it was a foolish insinuation that he was responsible for, but his government could not unravel it. He was so powerful as a military ruler. He didn't need the constitution to get anything done. He didn't need a national assembly. If he wanted to unravel that assassination, he would have done it, but he couldn't. For a military ruler who so repressed the right of the public to know, to then come forward several years after to launch a journey in service, to get praised by the public, to get generously reported even by the media. says a lot about who we are as a people.
Right. Yeah.
And tells me that press freedom is not about to improve in Nigeria, because even the current president who escaped abroad as a result of military rule was also in the room, and he has seen how IBB has been lavished with praise, with attention. And then what are you telling him? That I can do the same? I can jail journalists, and get away with it. And I'm sure that in the next 2-3 decades, if I sat down to launch a book and speak to Nigerians and gather the most famous politicians in one room, then everything will be fine.
Right.
So it's scary to me, the outlook. It's scary, and then the templates that have been presented to people like Tinubu.
Right. Fisayo, please hold that thought.
Yes.
Please hold that thought. We need to take this commercial break. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation. Please stay with us. Our guest this morning is Fisayo Shiyombo, is an investigative journalist and founder of Foundation for Investigative Journalists. We're back in a moment. Do stay with us.
Thank you.
We are 𝐃𝐈𝐒, an investment company and wealth manager to a thriving generation of young Nigerians. We have set up our customers to become financially free in ways that won't take the style from your lifestyle. This is why we are passionate about wealth, to move you beyond the potential you see today to the untapped financial possibilities you desire tomorrow. It's time to do wealth differently. 𝐃𝐈𝐒, plan, save, invest.
ṣọ́ra fóònù tiẹ̀ ló wá sọ títí tó o tún ṣe síbẹ̀ tí kò gbọ́ tó jẹ́ káwọn ẹnjìníà máa sọ ẹ́ di jẹunjẹun wo má jẹ́ kó tì sọ ọ̀rẹ́ wa torí àìrìn jìnnà láìrábùkẹ́ ọ̀kẹ́rẹ́ jẹ́ mú ẹ lọ sí iléeṣẹ́ tó máa yí nìke fóònù tí wọ́n bá sọ fóònù rẹ di tuntun ní kíákíá ká lọ sí Real Phones Repair and Unlock Services. Real Phone Repair and Unlock Services ọ̀gá ni wọ́n nínú ká tún fóònù ṣe ká sòkú fóònù dá láàyè tó bá wá jẹ́ pé ẹ fẹ́ unlock fóònù ni ọ̀gá ni lásà Real Phones kó tún jẹ́ screen problem ni wọ́n ní gbogbo àrùn kárùn tó bá ń ṣe fóònù rẹ ní Real Phones abẹ́ ìgbéyẹ̀wò tí wọ́n sì sọ fóònù rẹ di tuntun. Iléeṣẹ́ wọn wà ní number 35C Nipos Shopping Complex ládojúkọ Cocoa House Ìbàdàn. Wọ́n wà láti wọlé géètì wọ́n tún wà lápọ̀tún rẹ̀ gẹ́lẹ́ tó bá ti wọlé tán. Ẹ lè pè wọ́n sórí 0706-436-8169 tàbí 0809-695-7878. Real Phones Repair and Unlock Services ojútùú sí gbogbo ìpèníjà fóònù rẹ.
Alhamdulillah, Ramadan dé lọ́tún 32 FM Ramadan quiz gbọ̀nà tún yọ.
Ìrọ̀lẹ́ ni ti ọdún 2025 yìí o.
4:15 p.m. lójoojúmọ́ ní ìdíje yóò máa gbéra sọ. Ọmọ ọdún 8 sí 15 8 to 15 years ni ó láǹfààní àti kópa lórí rédíò 32 FM 94.9 live and direct Mondays to Friday. Yaumul Jumu'ah ńlá ṣekágbá ọ̀sọ̀ọ̀sẹ̀ bí ìṣe wa.
Monday àkọ́kọ́ nínú oṣù Ramadan 1446.
Ní ìdíje 32 FM Ramadan quiz yóò gbéra sọ. Onírúurú ẹ̀bùn ló ti kúnlẹ̀ fáwọn olùdíje kí àwọn ọmọ yín tọ́jú orí wọn wà lọ́dún 8 sí 15 kí wọ́n ṣàtìpè wọlé láti dáhùn béèrè bó ti tó àti bó ti yẹ lọ́rọ̀ bábù ṣe. 32 FM Ramadan quiz
2025.
Mashallah, ọmọ mi ò ní gbẹ̀yìn bẹ́ẹ̀.
Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́ o. Wọ́n máa fà sálátù. I'm in love, Sonia tomato mix, stand up. Easy to open, easy to squeeze, easy to scoop and easy to stir. Dishes come alive with so much taste. Sonia tomato mix, of course. Sonia tomato mix, yes sir. Sonia tomato mix, stand up pouch.
Sonia tomato mix in a new stand-up pouch.
So much in love.
Ẹ̀yin fans mi.
It's okay.
Ẹ lọ sórí gbogbo ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ ní 32 FM 949 fẹ̀yìn ẹ̀ àsáfù.
It's okay.
Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́ o. Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́.
Mariaba Abikaya Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan dé lọ́tún 32 FM Ramadan quiz gbọ̀nà tún yọ.
Ìrọ̀lẹ́ ni ti ọdún 2025 yìí o.
4:15 p.m. lójoojúmọ́ ní ìdíje yóò máa gbéra sọ. Ọmọ ọdún 8 sí 15 8 to 15 years ni ó láǹfààní àti kópa lórí rédíò 32 FM 94.9 live and direct Mondays to Friday. Yaumul Jumu'ah ńlá ṣekágbá ọ̀sọ̀ọ̀sẹ̀ bí ìṣe wa.
Monday àkọ́kọ́ nínú oṣù Ramadan 1446.
Ní ìdíje 32 FM Ramadan quiz yóò gbéra sọ. Onírúurú ẹ̀bùn ló ti kúnlẹ̀ fáwọn olùdíje kí àwọn ọmọ yín tọ́jú orí wọn wà lọ́dún 8 mẹ́jọ sí mẹ́ẹ̀ẹ́dógún kí wọ́n ṣàtìpè wọlé láti dáhùn béèrè bó ti tó àti bó ti yẹ lọ̀rọ̀ bábù ṣe 32 FM Ramadan quiz
2025.
mashallah ọmọ mi ò ní gbẹ̀yìn bẹ́ẹ̀.
wọ́n máa fàṣàlà tó ránṣẹ́ o wọ́n máa fàṣàlà.
My kids love tasty snacks, but many snacks are not so good for them. That's why I love the new Milo Anna snacks.
We love it, Mom.
Yes, it's a delicious snack with the goodness of malt, milk, cocoa, and crunchy Niger-grown maize containing calcium, iron, and fiber.
So, pack Milo and snacks in their lunchbox every day to help your kids refuel at break time and keep winning all day. Milo, energy to go further.
Milo. You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
Welcome back. The Podium on 32 FM 94.9. We have Fisayo Shiombo, an investigative journalist, join us this morning. So, Fisayo, thank you for staying with us. Welcome back from that break. Let me quickly welcome our second panelist before we continue the conversation. Is Professor Remi Ayede, Professor of Political Science, University of Ibadan. We'll also be asking you questions as the conversation progresses. Prof, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. I welcome our guest. It's a pleasure to have you on the program this morning.
Right. Okay, so, Fisayo, you're talking about the IBB government earlier in the context of the book that you launched, during the week and the reactions that have trailed it. But some will say that, that happened in the military government, that as expected, the military government, the gag media, the censor of the press. But we are now in what, some say is a democracy, some say it's a civil rule. Some say, well, it looks like this is mirroring the dictatorship that we had in those years and in the Abacha days, that the government of the day is tilting towards being dictatorial in their approach to dissenting voices and journalists as well. So what do you make of that argument in terms of whether or not we are becoming worse or we are exhibiting military tendencies even within a democracy?
Of course, there is no other way to go. My organization in January. Okay, so now I can and that means my voice keeps echoing.
Oh, okay.
And not for me to call.
All right. Okay. What about now?
Okay, let me. It's still the same.
Oh, wow. Let's see if we can get that sorted. How about now? Right. We'll try and reconnect with Fisayo and get the echoes sorted. Meanwhile, as we try and reconnect with Fisayo, Prof, let me just quickly welcome you once again. We saw the, should I say, the comments, reactions regarding the book launch by the former military president Ibrahim Babangida. They call him Maradona, the evil genius. For some, I think let's try and get Fisayo on this other line. Then let's try and get Fisayo on this other line. Hello, Fisayo.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. Okay. Is it better now?
Good. Yes, it's better.
All right. Maybe we should just have you on this line. Let's have you on this line. All right.
Yes.
So, you were reacting. Prof, we'll get back to that. You were reacting to what I said about, the dictatorial tendencies of the government.
Yes. So, I was saying that in last month, my organization launched, that's Foundation for Investigative Journalism, launched an incident reporting platform to track, harassment, arrest, detention of journalists. And when we were going to make that launch, we did a small research. And we found out that between 1986 and 2023, when Bola Tinubu became president, a total of 1,034 Nigerian journalists had been detained. By May 2024, just 1 year into Tinubu's presidency, 28 journalists had been detained. And that figure was equal to the annual average of the last 38 years. Half of those years were under military rule. So you have a democracy. The annual average for detained journalists is just the same as what was in place under military rule. Then we've regressed, and it's not surprising because, again, every elected president or military president or military ruler who held sway did it and got away with it. So what exactly is the motivation for any president to take over power and then let a free press reign? You know, so as long as people do it, get away with it, the public don't mind. You know, the public don't even, sometimes the public don't even consider assault on journalists as assault on them. So that troublesome journalist, why is he always going undercover? Is he the only one who can do journalism? Is he the only one who can write? But the moment the press is repressed, your right to know has been infringed upon, and then you don't have access to the right information you need to make informed decisions. It's important to relate it to how it affects the people. You know, people often view press freedom as just, it's about the media, it's about journalists. Every profession is risky. I also work somewhere else, and then I'm not exactly free. But an attack on the media is an attack on the public right to know, and then the people are not in the best shape to make good decisions.
Right. You are somebody who has been, at the forefront of investigative journalism. You've, as I said in my introduction, you've, gone undercover. I even followed that prison story at the time. You know, you went undercover, you had to change your hair color, you did everything. You also did the expose regarding the smuggling activities, the issue of, within the customs service as well. So let's break it down. Let's talk about the prison service. First of all, you in that excerpt of the interview I played, you talked about how justice is for the poor, not for the rich in this country, that as long as you have money within the correctional system, you're almost certainly not going to stay behind the four walls of the prison. So tell us your experience regarding that investigation you did within the customs service, within the correctional service.
Not just in the prison system. I've made a habit of always referring to them as the Nigerian prison service, not the correctional service.
Well, yeah.
Correct. Don't just happen by name. It's not. You don't rebrand. You don't rebrand an institution just by changing its name and you say it's effective. No. So it's a prison system. There's nothing correctional going on in that place, because a lot of the prison warders, a lot of them should actually be behind bars. A whole lot of them. You can't visit prisoners without warders asking you, what have you brought? And if you have brought nothing, then they are hostile towards you or they don't want to let you in. I've said multiple times, inmates have access to phones that are hidden. That's why inmates are in prisons and they are still able to commit crimes. They are still able to mastermind frauds. How did those phones get in? Nothing gets into the prison cells without the knowledge of the warders. And it's beyond the prison, even in the judiciary. If you have your money and your case is not hasn't caught the attention of the media, hasn't generated enough public interest with funds, the chances are very high that a magistrate pronounces you remanded in prison custody and you sleep in your house that night.
So at the time when the controversy about, for instance, Bobrisky broke out, you had no doubt whatsoever. You had no reason to doubt it about whether or not somebody had access to a special apartment where they did their jail term instead of staying within the four walls of the prison.
Why should I doubt something that I experienced by myself? Prison warders came to me in court and said, look, if you have your money, you stay in the special cells where you want. And I told them how much. And they gave different figures, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, even 1 million. But they told me you serve the prison either with your body or your money.
Wow.
And they gave they gave a specific example because I was astonished. And they said, oh, come on. When Ayefayese was in prison, do you think he stayed in the same cell as other people stayed? So why are you surprised?
Okay, let me bring up. Yes.
If I can add something about the importance of the public rights to know. So you mentioned customs.
Yes.
And in the investigations I did and the tweets I put out, the Good Morning Nigerian Customs tweets I put out, I said it repeatedly that those times that customs would publicly announce the seizure of whatever people were importing, those were the people that did not bribe customs. Those who know their way, who have the connects in customs, they smuggle everything possible. Now, it is the customs itself that enables smuggling. It's the organization that was set up to fight smuggling that enables smuggling. You see, the public needs to know. Until I started writing about it last year, so many people did not know that actually custom, the Nigerian Customs Service, is the agency that spearheads smuggling. So people have to know this. So that we are not under the illusion that when customs makes announcements and they talk about figures, you should know that sometimes when they report 1,000 bags that they seized 5,000. The officers sold 4,000, distributed 3,000, and came to announce 1,000 to you. You should know the extent of the rot in the system, so that those who are interested in fixing this country know how much work we need to do and where to start from.
Right. Let's go to our panelists now. Let me start with Barrister this time. Barrister Yomi Ogunlola. Barrister, you have the floor. Hello, Barrister. Are you with us? Hello? Okay, maybe we should go to Prof. Prof, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Prof. Okay, you have the floor, Prof.
I was just wondering how risky or how safe he has been since all of those escapades, all those undercover investigation that he has done. And why does he think that it is worth the risk in a country like Nigeria?
Fisai, did you get the question?
No, I struggle to pick.
Okay, he is saying that, you should talk to us about your safety since you did that exposure, since you made that exposure about the problems in those key institutions of the country, and whether or not you think, why do you think it's important to go through that risk for a country like Nigeria? Because people often say that at the end of the day, when you look at these past leaders and the actions, the fact that some of them end up being celebrated, ask yourself, is it all worth it at the end of the day?
So but my motivations are internal and not external. If I'm convinced something should be done, I do it without thinking of the results. So the results, so people, those who wonder if it's worth the risk, are thinking externally. So what if you do it and there is no change? External. What if you do it and then you get arrested, you get killed? External. So the conversation should be about internal convictions. In the inside of me, am I convinced the public deserves to know? Yes. Now, what the public then do with that knowledge should not influence what I do. What the government does with the exposure should not influence what I do. And as a matter of fact, there have been times when I did stories that, generated the impact that I wanted. For instance, I went undercover with human traffickers in Burkina Faso. Lots of Nigerians are back after reading that story to say, oh, I would have fallen victim. As of 2 days ago, someone still, emailed me to say, oh, I would have paid these guys and tried coming to Burkina Faso, if not that I, ran into your story. So sometimes for the impact that one story can generate, you do 5-10 investigations because you are not sure exactly which one will be impactful.
Yeah, I think you also asked about your experience in the course of this investigation. Stories about intimidation, harassment, your safety in particular as a journalist. As the experience is at the forefront.
Oh yes, every time I get threats on my social media, particularly on Facebook, smugglers are more present on Facebook than on X, which is understandable. X is more. So anytime I put out something, I think the last I did was like some 2 weeks ago, and I got comments like, "Your days are numbered. You will soon be history. Very soon we will stop hearing from you." And these are threats that I've been getting on and off for like a year. So it's not like I needed anyone to threaten me to know that if these guys thought they could do it and get away with it, they would try. Yeah, if you report, if you expose a story that shows the link between state and government, if your investigations expose state actors as criminals, because smuggling is a crime.
Yeah,
and customs officers spearhead it, so they are criminals. This is not me just throwing words at people. I have shown how it's impossible. People need to drive your car with 2 bags of rice. I can tell you will not pass 2 customs checkpoints. 2 bags of rice. You cannot. So when things get, you can't move in things without the knowledge of customs. You can't move in multiple bags of rice, of chicken, of turkey, and the public consider it as, oh, but they are just moving agricultural produce. No, we are killing the economy. We are telling people that farming is an absolute waste of time, a joke of, whatever you can do with your life. Because you are a farmer and you are struggling to make profit, and you are looking at smugglers, primary school dropouts, making billions from cash of the authorities. So these things are what exposing, and when you do that, you expect, threats from customs officers. I have gotten, by proxy, threats from customs officers. I've gotten threats from customs officers' wives. Telling people who know me, this guy is not going to live long. This guy doesn't like his life. This guy doesn't, and then customs have contemplated arresting me. The police have contemplated arresting me. The army have, like Nigerian army, yes, they've done it. It's operating in a hostile environment. You find a way to do it somehow, but what it means is then that life is not straightforward for someone like me. So I don't live like the average Nigerian. I know that I have to keep watching over my back.
Yeah, and just before I go to Barrister, I saw one of the interviews where you said that you were daring the customs service to give you 1 police or 5 police officers or thereabout, that you'll be able to unravel smuggling and put an end to it. Did you ever get any response from them regarding your challenge to them, about them giving you officers and you going into the heart of where the smuggling is happening?
If I remember correctly, I made that challenge about 5-6 months ago.
Yes.
I'm still waiting to hear from anyone, and the challenge still subsists. I wasn't expecting them to respond because they know that it's the easiest thing to expose smugglers. Have their routes. They move mostly at night. Any member of the public can. Just follow the stories I've done, go to those roads, stand on those roads. You see those trucks when they come in. The cars that bring in rice, they are shaped a certain way. When I write, for instance, that again, and this is why I say the right of the public to know is sacrosanct. When the public does not know, there are huge problems. There are huge problems because these guys then get away with a lot of impunity. I would write that, thousands of bags of rice were to be moved in at the rate of 50 bags per car, and people are bewildered, and they say, no, it's not possible. It is possible. It's just that you don't know how the smuggling vehicles are remodeled. It's when you have not seen those cars. Say, how can 50 bags of rice enter a car? No, go to the border and see if those vehicles are like the vehicles that regular members of the public drive. And look at how those vehicles have been adjusted to aid smuggling.
Right.
Smuggling vehicles are the easiest to recognize. The routes are public. You would see those things. And then when they say they are smuggling rice, chicken, turkey, nobody gets to check what exactly it is they are bringing in. And I keep saying that arms and ammunition find their way into the country through routes like that because nobody is checking. No customs officers. Well, now, when certain people, certain names that are put forward in the past, when they want to smuggle, no customs officer on the road can stop those trucks.
Right.
They tell them this movement from FOU. You can't stop.
Yes.
You don't know whether it's guns or bullets or arms. You don't know.
Right. Let's go to Barrister now. Barrister, I hope your line is clear now.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Fisayo, I have listened to you passionately too, and I am so happy I have this opportunity to ask this question that has always bothered me. Delegiwa was murdered. Bola Ige was murdered. Till date, no information as to what truly happened. Nobody is answering questions on them. One of the wives of late MKO Abiola spoke with the press and talked about an incident that happened on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway when she accompanied her husband to see the late Olubadan of Ibadan, Oba Shanke, that there was a robbery along the route, and against her admonition, the late MKO Abiola asked the driver to drive to the scene, that he was going to give the armed robbers money. And he did accordingly. Asked the armed robbers to stop, gave them money, released the victims, and everyone was happy. Late Abiola's wife told the world that two of the armed robbers, one of them became a governor in one of the southwest states, and the other became a legislator at the federal level. So I keep asking myself, don't we have investigative journalists in Nigeria? Or if we have, maybe that qualifier is just not what we suppose it to be. How come investigative journalists have not gone into these issues to unravel the mysteries, surrounding particularly the three incidences that I have mentioned?
Right, Fisayo.
Thank you, Barrister. It's a lovely question, and the answer is straightforward. How come investigative journalists have not gone for these stories? Simply because of what we are discussing, press freedom. Because they know to do those stories would mean arrest, detention, possibility of bodily harm, possibility of death. And at the risk of sounding immodest, I can say that, pardon me that I'm the one saying this about myself. You would get someone like me once in every generation, once in every decade. And the facts are there. I went to prison undercover in 2019. No, it's 6 years after. And you can't find one journalist to do that again, to replicate that. I've gone undercover in a psychiatric home. I was there for 10 days. 6 years after, you can't find a journalist to do that. The last journalist to go undercover cross-border is a guy called Emmanuel Meyer. At that time, he was with his son. He did that maybe like 20 years ago. So, and I did that 2023. So you are not going to have that journalist that is risking it all to tell you the most important stories, simply because of these things I've itemized. At the start of this show, you asked me, so how come you do it despite a lack of action on some of your revelations? How come you do it despite the possibility of threats? So if I was your relative, Barrister, I am very sure that at some point you would have called me aside to say, Fisayo, are you sure you want to continue doing this? I have relatives who have done that. One had a long conversation with me some 3 years ago and said, the work that you do is important. But I would have loved that it's not my blood doing it. And then I asked him, I let him speak for like 10 minutes. And then I said, okay, can I respond? He said, yes. Can you promise me that if I dropped investigative journalism this minute, I would live for 70 years? Is that a promise you can make to me? And he couldn't. People were in their vehicles on Ikorodu Road in Lagos. The container tumbled on Ojuelegba, tumbled on them, and the Ojuelegba Bridge, and they died. People were on Otedola Bridge. There was a tanker accident, tanker fire or something. Some of them died. People sit in front of their shops. Trailers lose control, hit them. Death is everywhere. That's how I see it. To be alive, that you are alive, is already a predisposition to death. That's my philosophy, and that's why I do the job that I do. And I know that I have God on my side, and I know that until I won't be killed until God says it's time. That's sure. If it's not my time, but you're not going to every day find people who see life that way and want to go after that stories, because these guys stop at nothing. When I was out of the country, there was a time I was in South Korea, and smugglers were saying, "Oh, we know saying they China. If no be saying they China, who him be? If we don't get them." Yes, this way. Some of these things I'm saying, I have audio, I have text to prove. Someone once opened an account, a Facebook account, and dedicated it to my end. Titled the Facebook account "The End of 𝐒𝐈𝐒 But this was some 2 or 3 years ago. So this, the climate to operate as an investigative journalist is harsh, and it is unlikely that you would find 2, 3, 4, 5 people per year who want to brave the odds to do those stories. The public understanding, the public appreciation for investigative journalism is also low. So you also will find it hard to get someone who wants to brave all these odds and forget about whether they get appreciated by the public or not. People have no idea how costly investigative journalism is. I published an investigation in 2023 about an orphanage home that I tracked for 19 months that was selling babies, and I bought a baby. I paid 2 million naira to buy that baby. Nobody ever came to say, let's recover that money for him. NAPTIP never did it. The police never did it. The government, even members of the public, did not say, oh, but wait, so what has happened to that 2 million naira? Is that how it's going to disappear? No, we have to get it back for him. Nobody did. And that's just the cost of the baby. If I put together all what I spent, it's multiple millions of naira. So again, it is cost intensive. People don't want to fund it. The public don't know. The public are not interested in your protection. In fact, people blame you. Are you the only one? This country is so dangerous. You better be careful. You better know what you are doing. So let's be realistic. A time will not come when you find part-time 5 investigative journalists who are willing to go and track armed robbers who became governors. As a matter of fact, investigative journalists or potential investigative journalists are very well aware of the connection, of the closeness between state and non-state actors. I mentioned a smuggler repeatedly last year, and I said this guy is close to the highest levels of power in this country. This is a primary school dropout. The majority of the heads of security institutions in this country know him. Some have personal friendships with him.
Who are you talking about? I think his name is. Who are you talking about again?
There's a court case, so I don't want to mention it.
All right.
Of course, once the court case you get, if it's, of course, unless I don't want to preempt the court, so I would rather not talk about it.
Yes.
But I mentioned it repeatedly. People can go to my timeline to find it, or find previous interviews that I've done. If you have personal friendships with the kind of people that should nail you, that should put you behind bars, then an investigative journalist understands that every time you write about that guy, you are endangering your life. And don't forget, the government is powerful. The people are more powerful, but don't underestimate the power of government. And that's why I say all the time, if government wants to find you, arrest you, it is a matter of time. You find reasons to deter them, to prevent them to make them change their mind, reconsider. They can think it's a bad decision to do it, or the timing is bad. There was a time in December they were going to arrest me, and they came back and said, "Oh, the timing is bad." That's what my sources told me, because that was the time when Dele Farotimi had been in detention, and people were planning to protest, and they thought, look, if we pick this guy, we would hit up the polity the more. The timing is bad. So things like that. But it's not like if the government wants to find the government is that powerful. And so when you operate in a climate like this, you know that it's very dangerous. And you know as well that the murders that Barrister spoke about, they were not resolved because it was not in the interest of the government for the assassinations to be resolved. I can say that clearly. Babangida can say from now to tomorrow that he didn't kill Delegiwa. It was not in Ibrahim Babangida's interest to unravel the killers of Delegiwa. Trust me, if IBB's relative was killed, we would know the killers by now. If IBB's dear wife, Miriam, was the one who was ripped apart by a parcel bomb, are you telling me that by now we wouldn't know the killers? That's a question for all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting, Fisayo, because some people have also said that for somebody to be so tactful, to be able to unravel the circumstances behind the Awka coup, at that time, that why would he not be able to unravel the murder of a journalist? They also talk about, the murder of an attorney general, an incumbent attorney general under a civilian president, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, how he was murdered in his house over 20 years and yet unresolved. It speaks to the issue of the interest and the political will of those in power. And it's interesting that just a few days ago, both of them were together talking about their legacy as past presidents and elder statesmen. But I want you to also talk about the how to strike a balance between press freedom and the issue of national security, because that's something that often comes up even in advanced democracies. You hear the cases of Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and there are those who talk about the fact that there has to be a balance between upholding national interests and national security and upholding the rights of journalists and whistleblowers. How do we strike the balance? Because, here in Nigeria, we've seen how the government used the National Official Secret Act. We've seen it used in other countries as well, how journalists are arrested for quote unquote undermining national security by exposing classified information. Do you think there should be a balance, between all of this?
So, first of all, what happens to government officials who undermine national security by stealing public funds? When Alex Badi, I think it was, that when he left office, when he was in office, he was saying, how could soldiers say they were not armed when they had rifles? How could you have a rifle and say we're not armed? When he left office, he said that soldiers were underarmed. So those who embezzle funds meant to arm soldiers, they undermine national security. Because, for instance, in 2016, I covered the insurgency in the north, and I remember that I was in a hospital where a soldier who had been shot by Boko Haram was receiving treatment. And he narrated how they had gone to, I can't remember that village now, how the soldiers were chasing insurgents, firing shots at them. The insurgents were fleeing until the insurgents discovered that soldiers had run out of bullets. And the fleeing insurgents turned and started chasing the soldiers. That's how they shot him in the leg. So the fact that soldiers don't even have enough bullets to tackle Boko Haram. I'm talking about, the height of the insurgency in 2016. So what happened to funds that should have, provided soldiers with the right arms and ammunition? That's undermining national security. Because Boko Haram at the time was threatening to run rampage. They were expanding from Borno to other states. There were real fears that once they conquered the northeast, they would expand, they could come to the southwest. That's the security of the country, and people were undermining it. So when we talk about national security, we shouldn't reduce it to content published by the media. They published what undermine national security, so we have to punish them. That's not the only way of undermining national security. So those who undermine it in other ways, governors, lawmakers, presidents, who undermine it. So what is the punishment for them? That's one angle of looking at it. Then another is the public have no idea how many times investigative journalists, at least I can say, have access to information and they don't release.
in the interest of national security. I can give you my example. The 2016 insurgency investigation, I titled it Forgotten Soldiers, that I mentioned. At some point, I got access to figures. This was in June 2016. I got access to the number of soldiers who had either been killed by Boko Haram or had gone missing in action, confirmed killed or missing in action. So missing in action is that they've not come back from the war front, from the battlefield. It's likely they've been killed. The other option is that they escaped from the army, but it's likely they were killed. That figure was more than 900 as of June for that year. So in 6 months, more than 900 soldiers. This is not reported speech. This is I had access at that time to the record. The only reason I didn't put it out, in that investigation at that time, is that I did not know how many insurgents had been killed. So if 900 soldiers have been killed by insurgents, but 9,000 insurgents had been killed by soldiers, it's a different way of looking at who was winning the war compared to if it was 900 soldiers to 400 insurgents. I don't know if you get that.
Glass half full. Yes.
So because I didn't have the other side of the information, I didn't think that at that time, in the heat of the insurgency, that was the kind of information to put out. So every now and then, journalists make those sacrifices to then limit, or to excuse the persecution of journalists with undermining national security. I think that's far-fetched.
Okay.
I don't have, you can't really point at multiple examples of journalists publishing stories that undermine national. It happens once in a blue moon.
Okay, let me go to Prof now. Prof? Hello, Prof.
Thank you for
yes.
I was actually eager to ask him this question. I'm just wondering where he got the preparation, how he prepared for this particular role. Is it his training in the university? Did he undergo any special training for this kind of investigation? Because it's not just about courage. It requires a special kind of skill. So how did you prepare yourself for this role? How long did it take? Which are the institutions that facilitated your capacity to do this kind of very exceptional?
I also want to add, Fisa, before you answer, because I think you mentioned something earlier that if Barrister were your relative, it would have discouraged you. And I know how African parents can be, the things they can say to you. Ordinary, I have experienced myself. Ordinary to go and cover elections, the phone calls, all those kind of things. So, how were you able to overcome some of those external factors to have the courage to do this job? Fisa?
Okay, I'll answer yours first because it's more straightforward. With family, that's not something I discuss in public, because I'm the one who chose this line. I do all I can to insulate them from exposure to the risk, so I don't discuss family. But of course, that it's normal that you come under, pressure to not do this kind of job. That's completely normal. The question from
Prof. Yes, from Prof.
Yes, so I read animal science. I spent 1 year at what is now known as FUNAB. Then it was UNAB. And then from there, I went to UI where I graduated with a B.A. in animal science. But I from the end of my first semester, I knew I wanted to become a journalist, and all the things, the books I read, the activities I got myself involved in, joining the Union of Campus Journalists, becoming very active, becoming an editorial team member, becoming editor-in-chief, later becoming president of the Union of Campus Journalists, because I knew I wanted to become a journalist, and I wanted my journalism to serve public interests. That was clear. It wasn't just that I wanted to write. I wanted to be able to speak for people, to defend the voiceless, to hold the government to account. And then, year on year, I would analyze. After I got into the industry proper, I would analyze if I was on the right track, what I needed to do. As the years went by, I knew that if I wanted to realize those objectives, then my journalism needed to be investigative in nature. So I would read materials online, right? Read a lot, sometimes attend trainings, yes, but it's more about knowing exactly what I wanted to do and having the passion to develop myself. So I'm saying this because there might be one or two people who are listening who want to be investigative journalists, and they don't have to feel just because their discipline is not communication and language arts, mass comm, history, English language, that means they can't do it. No.
Right. Before I go to Barrister, you mentioned your investigative work in the Northeast in the heat of the insurgency at that time. I'm sure you've been seeing some of these conspiracy theories and reports flying around about, the USAID being a slush fund for terrorism across the world, including Boko Haram in Nigeria. You've conducted a series of undercover investigation. You've been at the forefront of the war, as you said. You've seen and heard things. Do you think that these allegations have any iota of truth? We've heard a lot about these conspiracy theories in recent days.
To be very honest, I try to refrain from making public comments about, controversies like this that when I have not personally investigated. So I haven't personally investigated it. So far, I don't have traces. I can't personally establish the links between USAID and Boko Haram. Appears far-fetched to me, but again, some of the things I've investigated myself, if you ask other people, they would say they were far-fetched. I spoke about 50 bags of rice in one vehicle, and people thought it was far-fetched. So maybe that's the same. But in all what has been circulated online, in particular, I haven't seen any that was an investigation. I've not seen any. It's someone in the US saying this, and other people saying that. It's not someone going through the rigor of an investigation and then exposing. Anyone can say anything, but to have investigated, we should, for a topic like that, it shouldn't be subject to opinion. It should be about the facts. It's not that someone says something. It's about someone has shown, because investigative journalism actually should show and not say. So I would believe it if I found an investigation proving rather than someone somewhere saying.
Yeah, but it also came after the CDS. Christopher Musa had an interview with Al Jazeera, and he also said that it looks like there is an attempt to destabilize Nigeria, that we need to look at the source of funding for Boko Haram. How are they being sustained for 15 years? That he says he doesn't like conspiracy theories, but it's looking like there is something like that happening against Boko Haram. So people say if the CDS can say something like this and there's already a perception like this, maybe things are adding up.
The fact that it was said by the CDS is even why I won't believe it. The Chief of Defense Staff,
yes,
that's a political appointee in the military, right? People in government tell us what they want us to know, not what they think we should know, not what we actually should know. I would never, and this is not to disrespect the office or the person of propaganda is a chief tool of the army in fighting wars, in fighting insurgencies, in speaking to the public. It has never been about the truth. It has always been about the line that they want to push and the things they need to say to back those things. So I just gave you the example of Alex Bade.
Yes.
Who was in office and said, how can any soldier with rifles say he was underarmed? The moment he left office, he said the same thing. So years, 5-10 years after the CDS's time in office, if he said something, I would receive it with slightly less doubt. Not like it's complete truth at that time, but I'll be less skeptical about it.
Right. Let's go to yes.
Okay, please go.
Let's go to Barrister. Barrister. Hello, Barrister. Are you with us? Hello, Barrister. Yeah, Prof, come in. It looks like Barrister is off. Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I'm with you.
Yes. Okay. Prof, hold on. Barrister is back. Barrister.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, Fisayo.
Yes, Pastor.
Given the hopeless tales of doom regarding the caging of the fourth estate of the realm, that is the press, and what appears its immutability, if we cannot expose the ills of society, isn't this a grim fate for our fatherland?
Yeah. Of course it is. It is, which is why this program is necessary. Conversations like these are important. We have to keep finding ways to protect the press in the interest of the right of the public to know. I believe the existence of a problem doesn't mean that problem has to be permanent. It has to be that people then rise to find a way to solve it. So next time a journalist gets arrested, for instance, there should be a protest within 24, 48 hours. A clear message has to be sent to government that, look, you have to give the press freedom to operate. I said earlier that government is powerful, and I added that the people are more powerful. IBB today, IBB would have become another Podium if the public did not protest. At some point violently, his annulment of the 1993 election and his intention to continue in power. He saw that, how the public handled it, the auguries were unfavorable, and that's why he left office.
Right. Prof?
Yes, I think I agree with Mr. completely when he says that we should take the CDS's statement with a pinch of salt. Remember, we are talking about this controversy, but in this same country, the security agency actually published a list of sponsors of Boko Haram. And then if you put that side by side with what the CDS was saying, you will know that it has to be taken with caution. Now, this brings me, how would I put it, my dilemma. Investigation is investigation. And apart from security agencies who are after criminals, people who have vested interests also have hire private investigators. And those do the job for money. I'm just wondering how what you are doing differs from what private investigators do. And apart from the public interest, you incur, like them, a lot of money. I'm just wondering how you survive. How do you keep body and soul together? Then beside that, I'm also wondering whether journalists don't have measures that they can take as a collective to address this increasing suppression of the press. Because if we leave each journalist to its our own contrivance, the risk will continue to go higher and higher, and it will affect both the quality of work that comes from the media and also their capacity to actually fulfill their mandate. So I'm thinking that what is the Nigerian Union of Journalists, for instance, doing, or what is their responsibility or role in addressing this siege on journalists?
Thank you very much. I like that you mentioned the Nigerian Union of Journalists, so which means that the 32 FM can then get a hold of the president of NUJ and then ask him to directly respond. I would love to hear his response. People who do my kind of job or are close to those who do my kind of job have their impressions of the NUJ, but I would like for the NUJ to be able to respond by itself. I would like for the Nigeria Guild of Editors, you haven't mentioned them, but that's another body, to be able to respond, speak about their limitations and and what they think they should be doing. There was another question.
Yeah, the other question is about how you incur costs and how you maintain your operations. I think something of the sort.
And how?
I don't know if I got that correctly, Prof.
Said that, and also the difference between what I do and what private
investigators do. Yes.
So private investigators have a brief. They get paid for it. It gets done. Investigative journalists establish the public interest first before they say yes or no. So if there is no public, a man can wake up and say, I think my wife of 20 years is cheating on me. Can you track her and establish this for me? A private investigator would say yes. An investigative journalist cannot establish the public interests. Because how does it benefit the public that your wife is cheating or not cheating on you? That's a private matter. Of course, if you then have maybe the head of a public institution who is siphoning funds through someone she's having an affair with, then there is public interest, because we say, okay, so the affair is the reason for the mismanagement of funds. So essentially, there has to be public interest for an investigative journalist to get involved. That's no public interest, absolutely no story.
Well, why do you think the conventional media?
The second part, I don't know whether. I was reading this issue of how do you fund the operation? Is it not challenging to keep the operation going in this terrible economy, especially of the T-Pain?
With or without the Tinubu economy, it's challenging, which is why I said earlier, sometimes when people say there are no investigative journalists in Nigeria, investigative journalism is dead in Nigeria, I laugh at that comments, because for some stories, it's just the funds that mean you can't prosecute them. So it's harsh. That's one extra hurdle to navigate. We keep finding ways to do it. It slows us down because it means now I speak not for myself now, for my organization, because I have it's a 20-man organization. So it limits the scale of work that we can do. We will do more if we didn't have to struggle, with funds.
And what do you think? It looks like the mainstream media, the conventional media, seem to have. Some say they've lost their, vigor in terms of investigative journalism. There are those who have talked about the ownership factor, because the media space now is so liberalized that politicians come in there. Those who have held a post in government come in there. People even use radio stations, to pursue their political ambition and what have you. So do you think that is a factor in terms of not having, because what we see in Nigeria these days are like individuals taking the bull by the horn on their own and becoming investigative journalists, trying to expose a rot in the system, either via social media or via any other medium that they choose. So why do you think that we do not see this from this conventional media organizations that have the resources, have the office, have the network to even unravel these issues more than the individuals themselves?
Because he who pays the piper calls the tune. Simple. So the conventional media, a lot of them depend directly or indirectly on government patronage. For some of them, if the government blacklisted them from adverts, their operations will be severely affected. For some of them, most of them depend directly or indirectly on government patronage and corporate Nigeria. So it's difficult for them. I would say that the people will not see a media devoid of self-censorship until they find ways to fund journalism. So we are talking press freedom, but it's not the loss of freedom. It's not solely because government harms journalists. It's also because a lot of times journalists self-censor just to keep themselves in business. So until we find alternative ways of funding the media, at the end of the day, for so many of them, the media is a business. You want to expose wrongdoing, but you want to stay in business. They were established primarily as businesses, and businesses have to make profits. and only then can staff be paid.
Right.
Only then can operations keep going. So you are not going to expect them to crumble because they want to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories that respect your right to know. They need alternatives. Without alternative funding, it will be almost impossible to get conventional platforms to do the kind of journalism you want.
Yeah, and is there any such thing as, objective media? Because people say, oh, the media is no longer objective, they no longer speak the voice of the people. But if you look at it across the world, there are some, I'm talking about conventional media now. If you tune into any a particular international news media, if they are reporting the Israeli-Gaza conflict, for instance, you already know the angle through which they report it from. If you're watching another one, you already know how they will report it. So it looks like there's agenda setting within the media, especially in the conventional media space. It also almost happens at the same time here in Nigeria as well. If a news breaks, the kind of guest a certain station will bring on, the kind of narrative that will be pushed regarding that issue. So at the end of the day, is there 100%? Is there a platform that the people can trust 100% that this is going to deliver the news? In fact, Elon Musk his theory now is that the mainstream media is dead. People should rely on X for news and information. We remember the role that some of this international media organization played during when they wanted to justify the invasion of Iraq by Saddam Hussein, saying that there was a weapon of mass destruction. At the end of the day, there was nothing like that. So I don't know if you get my drift about finding that objective media platform that people can trust, devoid of wanting to set an agenda or build a narrative for those in power or those outside power.
Well, the thing is, objectivity is subjective. So when people say the media is not objective, I don't always agree. Yes, a lot of platforms have their biases. I mean, I run one, and we are biased towards the public. So if we're not sure, if someone came forward to say police arrested them and asked for a 500,000 bribe, we are likely going to believe if there is no evidence. We may not publish, but we will believe because of the kind of work we do, what we know of the police. So from experientially, we have our bias towards the public against oppressive institutions. So I then would imagine those who cover politics have their biases as well. But then again, people have their biases. And with their biases, people are, confirmation bias is real. People have a bias in mind, and then they are looking for a platform to validate that bias. And if a platform is not validating it, they instantly label it as subjective or not objective. So I look at it from both sides of the coin. Yes, platforms have their biases, that's a fact, but people also have their biases. And sometimes the problem is not always with the platforms, with the newspapers, with the TV stations. It's that the people have their biases, they are not finding confirmation in the media, and therefore labeling that exact media house as biased.
Right. Okay, let me go to Barrister now. Barrister, ask your question. We'll take a break and then we'll be wrapping up the conversation when we get back. So, Barrister.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes. Fisayo.
Yes, please.
Hostility towards the press by successive governments now appears a praxis. How would you rate the 𝐒𝐈𝐒 government, Tinubu's administration, in terms of its relationship with the media, given that himself is also a publisher, come broadcaster, who owns a television station, a radio station, and a newspaper, and has frontline journalists under his armpit. So how would you rate his relationship with the media?
I said it earlier at the start of this show that the number of journalists who had been detained 1 year into Tinubu's tenure, the number was 28, and that was equal to the annual average of detained journalists for the last 38 years. Almost half of which were under military rule. So that's not a figure that I created. That's what happened under Tinubu's tenure. So if, with all you've said about Tinubu, the figure of detained journalists 1 year into his tenure is not any different from what you had during military rule, then it tells you that Tinubu is just like the people who fought in the past.
Yes, I'm hearing that Fisayo has to go now. Thank you so much, Fisayo Shiombo, for joining us on the podium this morning. It's been most intriguing hearing from somebody who has been in the field, who's been a victim of intimidation, harassment, just to bring in information to the people as an investigative journalist. Thank you so much. Barrister and Prof. Fisayo has to leave us. Your final comment as it goes.
Yeah, I just want to commend his effort and to thank him for the public spirited work he's doing, and to encourage him to ensure that he's not the last one in this assignment. And we think this institution for investigative journalism will thrive and will be a legacy that will be.
Right. Thank you. Barrister?
Fisayo, just before you go, we like to make our guests laugh as a therapy for the times. So let me make you laugh before you go. When you undertook this investigative stuff with the prisons, did you eat that their watery beans?
Of course, the answer is no.
Okay.
They
so
not.
So you were that means you were a privileged prisoner.
No. By that time, my cover had been blown.
Okay.
They didn't know yet that I was a journalist, but they knew I had a mission. So they did everything to make sure that I didn't see the food that inmates were eating. And of course, when people like that do everything to hide something, then something is wrong.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Fisayo Shiombo, for joining us on the podium. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. All right, we'll take a short break. When we get back, we'll be continuing the conversation on the podium. So stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Feel better about your life.
32 FM, 94.9, the antidote to depression.
Hello, abeg no vex. This Milo packet look different too. I see say them write support energy release for this packet. Abeg, na the same Milo.
No, this na the new improved Milo. The support energy release means say when you give your pikin dem Milo as part of their breakfast, you dey give them enough energy when they need to go school.
I like this one.
Your pikin dem need nourishing energy. Make you give them the new improved Milo for breakfast. It gets correct nutrients where they support energy release to help them use their day well. Milo, energy to go further.
Milo. Kò bá jẹ́ 24, 29 tàbí 32 ṣáà ti fẹ̀yìn ẹ̀ pẹ̀lú wa lórí gbogbo ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ kàn tẹ 32 FM 949 ẹ̀yẹ̀ fẹ̀yìn ẹ̀.
Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́ o. Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́.
Maria Babi Kaya Ramadan! Alhamdulillah! Ramadan dé lọ́tún. 32 FM Ramadan quiz gbọ̀nà tún yọ.
Ìrọ̀lẹ́ ni ti ọdún 2025 yìí o.
4:15 p.m. lójoojúmọ́ ní ìdíje yóò máa gbéra sọ. Ọmọ ọdún 8 sí 15, 8 to 15 years ni ó láǹfààní àti kópa lórí rédíò 32 FM 94.9 live and direct Mondays to Friday. Yàmọ̀lì Jùmọ̀ ńlá ṣekágbá ọ̀sọ̀ọ̀sẹ̀ bí ìṣe wa.
Monday àkọ́kọ́ nínú oṣù Ramadan 1446.
Ní ìdíje 32 FM Ramadan quiz yóò gbéra sọ. Onírúurú ẹ̀bùn ló ti kúnlẹ̀ fáwọn olùdíje kí àwọn ọmọ yín tọ́jú orí wọn wà lọ́dún 8 sí 15 kí wọ́n ṣàtìpè wọlé láti dáhùn béèrè bó ti tó àti bó ti yẹ lọ́rọ̀ bábù ṣe. 32 FM Ramadan quiz
2025.
Mashallah, ọmọ mi ò ní gbẹ̀yìn bẹ́ẹ̀.
Wọ́n máa fà sálátù ránṣẹ́ o. Wọ́n máa fà sálátù. I'm in love, Sonia tomato mix, stand up. Is it to open? Is it to squeeze? Is it to scoop and is it to stir? Dishes come alive with so much taste. Sonia tomato mix, of course. Sonia tomato mix, yes sir. Sonia tomato
Sonia tomato mix in a new stand-up pouch.
32 FM News. First, we're telling real stories.
We air stories from the perspectives of the people. Stories that our people can relate with.
In news delivery, we are fast, objective, and accurate.
We're all about changing the narratives by telling underreported stories and bringing those behind the news to your doorsteps.
At 12 noon and 4 p.m., we will continue to bring you comprehensive and factual news at home and across our various social platforms.
The stories you need to keep up with, from community news to sports, business, politics, and a lot more.
32 FM News, first with telling real stories.
Feel better about your life.
32 FM, 94.9, the antidote to depression.
President Buhari is represented at this occasion, celebrating the man who overthrew him and detained him for 3.5 years. His one-time old adversary, former President Babangida. And then, of course, there's a gentleman here who was an elected senator in 1992 in the course of Babangida's transition program. When Babangida annulled the 1993 election and General Abacha took over and dissolved the Senate, that senator tried to reconstitute the Senate in resistance to the dissolution. He was detained, charged to court. He escaped into exile. Today, he is also here to celebrate with his former tormentors. But as President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The third reason why this 420-page book is important is because it unveils one of the most enigmatic leaders that Nigeria has ever had. A man who some called Maradona, others described as the evil genius, bearing his mind in his own words in writing for the first time since he left office 32 years ago.
You have contributed to documenting history. It is an important part of our nation building to keep accurate records. Please, don't be unduly worried about critics and pull him down syndrome. It may even be an indication of success, but take note of objective criticism. A chronic critic of mine, the late Tunji Braithwaite, may his soul rest in perfect peace, condemned a book of mine, and when asked if he had read it, he answered in the negative. He said he had not read it, and said that once Obasanjo was the writer, it must be condemned. I laughed it off. You may be victim of such criticism and such character. Ignore it and remain unruffled and remain friendly with such critics. It's all bad belly.
I confronted you that you had an opportunity to make history that day, and you failed to do it. You are in office. You recalled we were elected. You kept on postponing the inauguration. You summoned us to Abuja. And when we became rancorous, you summoned us to the International Conference Center. I was not expecting to make any comment. I was just listening in my own radical manner that this man will not inaugurate us again. But before we return to the hotel, the hotel was locked. No key. But when I was summoned by Daily Cole to make a remark, I confronted you. That you had an opportunity to make history that day, and you failed to do it.
The tragic irony of history remains that the administration that devised a near-perfect electoral system and conducted those near-perfect elections could not complete the process. That accident of history is most regrettable. The nation is entitled to expect my impression of regret. As the leader of the military administration, I accept full responsibility for all decisions taken under my watch.
Well, a sound bite from that book launch of the former military president Ibrahim Babangida. You heard him saying that his administration accepts full responsibility for decisions taken. He calls it tragic accident of history. You also heard the voice of the president, Bola Tinubu, recounting how IBB did not want to inaugurate them when he won the senatorial election in 1993. You also heard the voice of the book reviewer, Professor Emi Osinbajo, who talked about Tinubu now moving with his former tormentor. Let me start off with Prof. Prof, what do you make of the issues that have been generated by this book, especially? Let's start from the angle of IBB himself, Babangida, admitting that it was an error. He says it was a tragic irony of history for a government to have masterminded the freest and most credible election and then use its own hand to annul that election.
Yeah, I think it's entire administration. It's a tragic experience for Nigerians. I mean, he embarked on a robust social and political engineering of the polity, only for him to make a mess of everything. It reminds me of the experience of Germany under Hitler. After removing Germany from the disgrace of the First World War, they thought that Hitler was going to position Germany as a country that is in the forefront of the world, only for him to embark on a direction that was clearly unsustainable, which eventually consumed him and puts Germany in very bad light up till this moment as we speak. So I think it was a military regime pretending to steer Nigerian towards democracy, and he called that process guided democracy. And I remember as an undergraduate member of the Civil Liberties Organization, the whole one very important, probably the last edition of the CLO magazine or newsletter, they called that newsletter Transition. The title of that edition was Transition Without End. And it was clear that it was his personal ambition that informed all of those engineering and all of those things. It's not surprising that you see this crop of politicians gathering in Abuja to celebrate him, because whether directly or
Prof?
Then okay. The dominant value of this political class is politics without principle, politics without ideology. And interestingly, his government produced very ideologically oriented documents, which was never used. For instance, if you look at the report of the Political Bureau, and you also look at the draft 1989 constitutions, these are very well thought out documents that was supposed to provide a sense of direction for Nigeria. But again, just as the June 12th election was annulled, those documents were also disregarded. I mean, you spend the resources of Nigeria, bring Nigerians' best brains together to chart a new direction for the country. They give you ideas, you put it in the dustbin. So you ask, why spend so much money? Why invest so much resources? Why this monumental waste? I mean, that's what the government is known for. Now, and one of the things they also don't talk about is how we institutionalize corruption. Those of us with the whole concept of 𝐒𝐿, you know, those things, they seem to have died. You know, somebody was saying history heals a lot of wounds. And another person, one group that I belong says, history also normalizes evil. It normalizes bad things. So I think there's a real problem that we need to do. The stock taking will begin after we have read this book, and then we put it in perspective. And I'm happy that he has described it as a regrettable accident of history. If you ask me, I will tell you that it is not the entire scenario. It's not a fleeting accident. It's an accident that was traumatizing, an accident that has indelible mark in the development of this country, and it is that dimension of it. The serious consequences has been underplayed by that launch. I think it's important for us to move from celebrating the book into looking critically at the content and then putting it within the context of the evolution of Nigeria as a nation. And then we begin to think about the process of healing, because that is also missing. So there's a huge gap between the fanfare that book launch represents and the sobering reflection that is required, you know, in terms of giving Nigeria a sense of purpose and a sense of direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the fact that you said we should look at the content of the book, but Chief Olusegun says there's going to be critics, and some of them might be bad belly or pulling down syndrome. But let me go to Barrister.
Who is pulling Obasanjo down? Where is he going to fall down from? He's been president twice. He's retired. Babangida, so it's completely irrelevant to the scenario. I mean, so he was talking about Tunji Braithwaite. No, say he didn't bother to read it. Of course, some people don't bother to read because the idea is, sit down, look, this man, nothing good can come there. That's cynicism. But everybody cannot be cynics. And that's why I'm happy. He also added constructive, should pay attention to constructive critics.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, certainly. Let me go to Barrister now. Barrister, I mean,
yes,
you know,
Toba, thank you very much.
The Yorubas talk about, you know,
Nigeria to me is under siege.
Go ahead, yeah.
By the ruiners of our fatherland, the greatest misfits that Africa has produced. I mean, a man confessed his crimes and people were clapping for him.
I'm telling you.
When they should be preferring charges against him, because Babangida, amongst many others like him, are people who rightly or ought rightly to be languishing in prisons, not correctional centers. What we had day before yesterday was a celebration of failure, a celebration of incompetence, a celebration of kakistocracy, celebration of greed, celebration of self-service, and celebration of authority stealing. Who is Babangida apologizing to? His neoliberal romance and subservience to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade and the World Bank through the 1986 SAP killed the textile industries, and it saw the manufacturing sector go aground. Who is he apologizing to? Those who suffered that fate under very unreasonable policies, unrealistic policies. What happened to Delegiwa? And the denial. Nigerians are no fools. We all know what happened. What is the truth? about the Gulf oil windfall and the money that came there from. Where is it? Babangida took Nigerians for another ride. He is indeed an evil genius. And it is so sad that he was so celebrated by, of course, his likes, or those who are modeling after his style. Maradonic style.
Yeah, speaking of
very, very unfortunate indeed.
Yes, speaking
very,
of
very, very unfortunate, I must say. That gathering, I am beginning to wonder why the heavens remained still, because that was one great opportunity lost. Having all the ruiners of Nigeria under one roof, and the heavens allowed them to go. But the heavens know better.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned him being celebrated, because all of them, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, current President Bola Tinubu, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, even Peter Obi, spoke glowingly about IBB. So you tend to wonder, as Prof said, maybe history heals all the wounds. And someone was saying that if Abacha were alive, if he wrote a book today, people will attend the book launch and try to whitewash, the Abacha years. Because I've also seen argument. Yes. Barrister, I've seen arguments of people saying that, even what was the price of rice during Abacha years? What's the price of rice now? So that means that even what was bad about Abacha? What was the price of Gary? What was Naira to dollar in the Abacha years? That's how people whitewash history, in this country. Barrister.
No, you see, Toba, you must place it in proper context. The majority of Nigerians are not in agreement with that rubbish that they did, celebrating a felon. Please permit me to use that word. It is his own likes that came together to celebrate him, not Nigerians. Nigerians will never celebrate Babangida. But because they are bereft of ideology, all of them, of course, it is to be expected. Let me borrow from Wole Adebayo of SDP. They have shown to Nigerians now that the civilians and the military are 2 rooms in a 2-bedroom apartment. There is nothing different about them. Otherwise, why would a Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who claims to have fought for democracy against the military, has imbibed almost everything that Abacha was doing under a democratic setting? So you can see that there is no divide amongst them. They are one and the same people. They are ruled by their bellies. They are unfit and improper persons to hold public office.
Right.
They are led by their greed. And so there is no difference amongst them. Look at Babangida, how rich he is today. Go and calculate all the money he made from the military. If it qualifies him for the kind of life he is living now. Now look at all the other people too that came. People who benefited the wealth of Nigeria without merit. They were given oil blocks. So it shouldn't surprise you. They are making returns to their organ now. Tinubu even said it too, that it was Babangida that made him go into politics. So you can just see the mix. There's nothing different amongst them. Right. The only difference is some wear khaki uniform, and these ones are wearing agbada. Okay. But ideologically, they remain in a serious connection. All ruled from their bellies.
Right.
It is a disgrace and very shameful.
Let me go to Prof now. Prof, I recall when we were discussing the passing of the former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, you talked about the concept of power, how Jimmy Carter was perceived as being weak, how sometimes you have to be as dynamic as dangerous, to stay in power, to be able to navigate the complexities, especially when you are a military man. So, away from whether or not what IBB did was right or wrong in office. But let's talk about his person and how he understood the concept of power to the extent that he was referred to as an enigmatic leader, an evil genius. They even nicknamed him after Maradona, a footballer who was at the height of his career at the time. So do you think that in the context of how power operates, you had the full grasp of it to be able to navigate the complexities and also overcome his enemies?
Well, if you look at the experience of that 8 years of his rule, it was a very challenging, not only for Nigeria but also for him. I remember there was the Oka coup, there's the Vasta coup, and then of course he was eventually forced out of power. So he did his best, but apparently the claim of evil genius may be based only the fact that he survived, didn't get killed in the process. This thing has gone off.
No, I can hear you, Prof. I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you, Prof. I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So it seems, apart from the fact that he survived, he didn't seem to have done very well like he thought that. After all, even the one who has a new reign, who participated in the Civil War, also spent that 8 years. So in terms of longevity, there's nothing remarkable about his achievement. But more importantly, I think that he took Nigeria on a rigmarole. I think that's why they described him as Maradona, because he was unpredictable. But remember, people also said he dribbled Nigeria until he dribbled himself out of power. That's actually the conclusion. But let me go back to Professor Deolu Akande's thesis, because I remember when during our master's program, that's when he defended the thesis, and he compared him to the work of Machiavelli. He described him as a Machiavellian leader who operated on the basis of the end justify the means. It didn't represent any core value, and as it turns out, it didn't actually lead Nigeria to any destination. So as far as power is concerned, he still was only able to keep the ship floating. He's a seaman rather than a navigator. Originally, he gave the impression of being a navigator. He declared himself the first military president. Probably he wanted to be president for life, if you look at the rigmarole. He embarked on a long social and political engineering process, which Nigerians thought was leading into a particular destination. But as it turned out, all of those processes were just designed to keep him afloat. The core values inherent both in MAPSA and in the Political Bureau report were never important to him. And that's why during his time, they institutionalized intergovernmental bribery, so that if you are a local government person or you are in the state, to get your revenue allocation for the federal government, you have to bribe. A governor has to bribe. I mean, it brought Nigeria to a very low point when we talk in terms of moral value. So this sense of anomy, this sense of anything goes, actually began with his government. So it was a government in which all what is important is being in power. Anything you have to do to be in power is fine. The larger Republican vision of a great country, which was supposed to be the foundation of the exercise of power, was completely lost. And I can tell you that we have not recovered from that experience. So for me, I think he didn't quite get to the point of being regarded as a statesman. So we are still looking for the statesman in Nigeria. We are yet to find one.
We're yet to find one. And Barrister, people have also tried to draw comparison because they say, look, he was a military president and there is no former military leader in this country that if they were to give a true account of the administration, they would not have to apologize to Nigerians, from the likes of Yakubu Gowon to late Murtala Mohammed, to former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was the military leader, came back as civilian. Muhammadu Buhari, same thing. That all of them would have something to apologize for to Nigerians for what they did in office, for those who remained as military men, even for those who came back as well. Barrister.
Yes, thank you very much. I will draw an exception with Tunde Idiagbon, because he was the prime minister when in 1983 they took over. I doubt if there is anything that Tunde Idiagbon would have apologized for. I very much doubt that. Those who said, yes, he killed people, drug barons, using retroactive laws, I know, given his body language, that Tunde Ijeagbo never felt sorry for doing what he had to do, because he wanted to establish at least a pattern of behavior in Nigeria that will qualify us to stand shoulder to shoulder amongst the Committee of Nations. Perhaps the issue of allowing his little son to go with him to Makkah, but then again, I doubt if Tunde Ijeagbo would have apologized for that. He stands, in parallel with most of the others that you have mentioned. These are people without a focus. They just saw power. They never knew how to use it. They were hungry for it when they were already full. It's so sad. That's the rubbish that has happened in this country. You can see what is happening now. All of them are trying to copy American presidents who, after leaving office, want to leave a legacy of a library, But they have forgotten something, that in America, universities have their libraries well stocked. You can imagine in Nigeria, where federal universities have their library shelves empty, and then they are coming out to say they want to go and build libraries in their houses. What kind of madness is that? Who does that? This is the kind of thing we are witnessing in this country. How much you got today, give it to University of Ife or Obafemi Awolowo universities to stock their library, and you can imagine the number of Nigerians that will benefit from it. So if I am writing my thesis or my final what do you call the final paper of undergraduates, I will travel to Mina to go and use his library, or travel to Abeokuta to go and use their library. Nonsense. You can imagine. So all they do is copy and paste. They are not looking at the context. They are not looking at the peculiarities of your own space.
Right.
Our universities are suffering. Our lecturers are suffering. There was an advert that I saw, one African country looking for messengers. The salary of the messenger, professors can only dream of it. A messenger. And somebody is building a library on top of OPL in Mina, like OBJ also did. I used the opportunity to take people's money. These people are meant for jail houses. I am telling you, all those people who have ruled Nigeria, go and see what is happening now. I said there was a function a couple of days ago. They were announcing the people that came for the function. And then I heard General Dia. I heard General Adebayo. And I was wondering, have these people invited dead people to their function? It was as if the cameraman read my thoughts. He now panned his camera to where they were sitting, only for me to see that it was Dia's son. He has reason to be a general. Yeah, he was Adebayo's son. He has reason to be a general. I also saw Alex Bade Jr., a director general in one of the choice agencies of government. Yesterday I was watching the news. I saw that one special assistant is what is this guy that ruled is it Imo State? Rochas Okorocha's daughter. Can you imagine? All of them are now putting their children in places of. These people are meant for jail.
Right. Right. Let me go to Prof as we wrap up. Prof, I mean, we've had a taste of both. We've had a long stretch of military rule, successive military coups here and there. We had a military leader who wanted to stay in power. People even did 1 million man march for him. 5 political parties endorsed him, but we got out of that. A former military man came back. Another former military man came back as well. We have a president now who says he was part of the struggle for democracy. I mean, does it look like, I don't know, because he said we've not found the statesman yet in Nigeria. Do you think that it looks like we are retrogressing, haven't had a taste of both, from the military to this uninterrupted civil rule? No much difference from the quality of leadership we've seen.
I would describe it as a travail of Nigeria's
Prof?
We are just working through. And the greater value of the current government, which they have actually borrowed from the Babangida regime, is crass, primitive accumulation. And with time, many of these things will fall into insignificance. I think we are still in search of that leader who clearly states the vision for the country and galvanize Nigerians around it. What we have are people who are trying to make a name for themselves. They think that their name can never be bigger than the name of Nigeria, or their name will be synonymous with Nigeria, but they will pale into insignificance in history. Because what stands presidents out is the value they bring to their society. And that's why we still talk about Obafemi Awolowo. It was even never president. It was just premier. He was even premier for some time. He had serious issues with some of his lieutenants. Yet, that did not diminish in significance because his achievements are based on vision. And if you read this book, you'll find them very worthwhile. And the interesting part is that there's no presidential library or premiership library for Awolowo. But we have people who have studied him, studied his ideas, refashion those ideas into a formidable political philosophy that if we are ever a very good system, we would have been teaching to our children right from elementary school. So all of this, I build a library for myself because I've been president, is out of the question. Those libraries, like the houses that built for themselves, will become dilapidated. Right. Although Shagari does not have a presidential library, but where is Shagari's building? So we'll see what will happen to the hilltop building when the time comes. Because the real legacy that statesmen grant to their society is the vision that they have for that society. And how they're able to impress it on that society that those visions are worth pursuing.
Right.
By the way they govern, by the way they live their life. Until we get to a point where we have a president of that nature, we're just passing through what they themselves have described as incidents of history.
Right. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Barrister. It's been a pleasure being on the show this morning. Thanks to our guest earlier, Fisayo Shiyombo. Thank you, dear listener. We'll be back again next Saturday on the podium. My name is OLORUNTOBA YUSUF. Special thanks to my producer, Bulabo for Moscow. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday morning. Bye for now.
Wasafa.